regrets. I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention.
Regrets can be crippling. They can consume us and make us long for a chance to just do things a little differently. Yet, when we live our lives, we don't generally consider what we might regret. You're likely just making decisions and dealing with those effects later. This tends to work for most things in life, but for grander and more impactful decisions about our career and relationships, a more sophisticated approach might help. Perhaps the best illustration of this is Jeff Bezos' mental model for making tough decisions. He calls it the regret minimization framework. In the early 1990s, Jeff Bezos was working at a New York hedge fund with a fairly stable job making a good amount of money when he noticed a significant growth of the internet. He had this idea of trying to sell books online to take advantage of the internet's surge in use. Naturally, it was a risk to move into a relatively unknown industry and quit his pretty great career. After taking 48 hours to think on it, Bezos came up with a model to help him take the leap and work on this small startup idea that he had. This is the regret minimization framework, and I'll let him describe it for you right here.
So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. And you know, I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I was not going to regret having trying to participate in this thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. And I knew that that would haunt me every day. And so when I thought about it that way, it was an incredibly easy decision.
If you are applying the regret minimization framework to your own life, you essentially have to start with this question. When I'm 80 years old, will I regret not doing this? If the answer is yes, then there really isn't much else you need. Just trust your gut. You'll never know what it might turn out to be. If the answer is no, then you could potentially feel a little bit more comfortable leaving it alone, or if possible, returning to it at a later time. This model can be a helpful way of taking the emotion out of the equation for a moment to see things a little bit clearer. It's an opportunity to step into the mental space required to make the right long-term decisions for yourself. The idea is to project yourself into the future and look back on your decision from that perspective. A perspective that can make your short-term fears and doubts a little bleak in the grand scheme of things. The psychology of regret was very well investigated by author Dan Pink, who in his book The Power of Regret talked about why regret plays on our emotions and how understanding regret can be used to our advantage. To support his findings in the book, Pink created something called the World Regret Survey, which collects data on regrets from people all around the world. Over 19,000 people from 105 countries shared their stories, and you can too on worldregretsurvey.com. The information that was collected helped him classify our regrets into 4 specific types. What might surprise you is that these categories are not broken down into categories like career, love, or personal, but instead they look like this. The first type is foundation regrets. So this would be things like not putting enough effort into your life and yourself. It would be not taking care of your health, or saving enough money, or working enough on an endeavor. Then there are boldness regrets, which are regrets about not being brave enough to take chances. Maybe quit that job and start that business, or leave that relationship and discover yourself. There are also moral regrets, where people look back at their lives, typically at certain crossroads where they had to make a decision to do the right thing or the wrong thing, and then they ended up doing the wrong thing. This could be things like bullying or infidelity or harming other people, etc. So stay away from drugs, kids. Lastly, there are connection regrets, where there are relationships, either family, romantic, or friendships, where the connections gradually fall apart and people don't do enough to try and fix those relationships. So you keep regretting not reaching out and doing what you could have at a certain point in time. The thing that regrets can teach us is that ultimately we all want something out of our lives, whether it's ambition or love or whatever, and that it's important to learn and grow and take chances on ourselves. We all have regrets to varying degrees, but what is important to recognize is that regrets from our past need to serve as signals about the things that we value and matter to us. So instead of pushing aside regrets and simply forgetting about them, if we can be open enough to accept them and learn from them, they should serve as a guiding force for our future decisions and give us courage with regard to opportunities. Please do drop me a like if you found this video helpful, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. See you next time.